Hello Internet, this is 10 Dimensions and this is our first video on channel and I want to talk to you about Yin and Yang. The first thing you notice is that I pronounce it as Yang, not Yan. A lot of the time I see people pronounce it as Yin and Yang. It doesn't really make sense because I don't know why you have to mispronounce that. That talks about, that kind of explains about 80% of the things you see on the internet about the Chinese culture, especially the Taoism and the Chinese Buddhism, because how it's mistranslated and how people understand it from a different cultural perspective. A lot of the information are inaccurate, to say the least. The first thing you need to know about Yin and Yang is that it's it's a philosophical idea and a concept, but for people who actually believe it, it's actually real. We're going to talk about why we view the world this way. In this video, it's going to be relatively short because I'm really bad at making videos, and you can see that all I have right here is a crappy presentation. But we're going to talk about the origination of Yin and Yang from a philosophical standpoint. We're going to talk about the mutual generation, mutual transformation, complementation, restriction, and how you actually use it. And that we'll get to the good part. That's how you actually use it. Okay. So let's get started. The first thing you need to know is about the origination of Yin and Yang. A lot of people say, yeah, it originated from this culture, from China. Yeah, but that's from the outsider's view, right? If you look at it as philosophical idea, we believe that Yin and Yang is something that naturally exists in this world. So the Chinese view of the world is that, and I'm specifically talking about the Taoism. So the world comes as to a chaotic non-existence. So at this time, there's no existence. You can barely describe it because any description would have to describe something that already exists. So there's nothing. That's why we call it the void. And from the void, there becomes something, and that is the Tai Chi. So Tai Chi refers to that very origination. And once it started, at this time, there's no yin and yang, but once that existed, you can't stop it. And then it will have this, let's say, called a Big Bang, and then it will be separated into yin and yang. And during those time, yang is when this thing moves, and yin is when it slows down or stops moving. And that contradiction becomes two different matter. So imagine a person that when he was born, he barely shows any characteristics of female or male, but when he moves like a male, a strong male. But when he slows down, he kind of shows all the gender qualifications of a female. That's what this is about. And I'm talking figuratively here, so don't put me on that political correctness stuff. And that potential is how the world is originated. And because the entire world, we're talking not just the earth, we're talking not just the universe, we're talking about everything we know and we do not know in all existence. They would have to have Tai Chi, and they would have to have the Tai Chi that transfers to Yin and Yang. And that includes you and me, includes our body, includes how humans are formed from even a cell. What's the correct word? Yeah, whatever. But remember that concept, because that is what we believe how everything come to be. So if you want to start a company, you start a company from nothing, and then you have this idea, That idea is the Tai Chi of that company. And that idea will start to move towards actions. And once you have actions, you have concepts, you have thoughts, you slow down, think about it, and more complication comes towards it. You file taxes, you do paperwork, you hire people, you start organizing. That is how literally yin yang works. All of those are yin and yang. Ah, I said yin and yang again. Back. So yin and yang exist in everything. They are the origin of the world and everything works in their methods, in their ways. When there is yin, there should equally be yang. It's hard to correct myself. So, what I'm saying is, if you see something that can be characterized as yin, you would see something in its opposite direction, which would be characterized as yang. So, for example, where there is sunlight, there is there is shadow. Okay, so where there is river, there will be wind and rains. That's the yin and yang concept. So when you see something exist in its existence, you would know the antimatter of that thing would exist, because that's the fundamental of our world. And the next concept is when there is currently yin, this yin or this phenomenon you're seeing is inevitably going to transform into something as a yang. So, for example, if you have, say, if you have a little kid who is scared all the time, who is very shy, that kid eventually is going to grow up, and that kid's personality is going to change. And there's a very large likelihood that that kid's personality is going to be something very bold, very brave, which is in comparison to the shyness that he had or she had when the kid was small. But in reality, there's a lot of complications coming in, a lot of things would affect it. So the yin and yang transformation would be different. Okay, so you would think that it, from negative you would be positive, from positive you would be negative, and I'm talking about electric charge here. You see, I'm jumping from one thing to another. That's because literally yin and yang exists in everything. And the third thing is they multiply, and this is something every time I see a yin and yang video, they don't talk about this. That is, when you have something of yin and you have something of yang, you put them together, they don't just balance each other, they create something new, which is called the multiply. So from Taoism, you have the Tao Te Ching, that has a line said something like this: from one comes the birth of two, from two comes the birth of three, and from three comes the birth of everything. I don't know how you translate it, but that's how I would translate it. So the one is Tai Chi, and two is referring to yin and yang, and three is referring to the multiplication of yin and yang. So when you have yin and yang together, they are going to multiply and create something remarkable. Why we call it remarkable? Because it's something that is different from yin and yang, and that is something that it also has its own yin and yang, and that something has all the recursions of yin and yang. I'm saying recursion here because that literally is recursing. And if you look at all the recursive behaviors in the natural world, they would somewhat follow this. So a very explicit example would be when we humans make babies. Okay, you have a man, you have a woman, and they get together. A woman has an egg, a man has sperms, and when they come together, there's yin and yang combined, and that fertilized egg is going to grow up to be a newborn baby, and that baby has both yin and yang, just like the man and woman before, and that baby has everything that a man and a woman has, or somewhat of their genetics. And that concept is everything of our universe. So everything in our universe, if there's one matter or energy that is yin, there's going to be a matter or energy that is relatively young. And when they get together, they multiply, they create something new. So from chemical reactions to nuclear reactions, they all follow that philosophical idea. And now you see how big this is because you see it everywhere and it exists literally everywhere. And if you once you grasp that idea, you can eventually use it, which is something we will talk about later. So here's the mutual generation. And full disclosure, this text I generated from ChatGPT. I just simply don't have the time to type it at all. So we believe that from yin, there's energy, potential, and a resource to have something of yang. And from yang, there's going to be potential to have yin. What that means is, let's say if you kick a football, when you kick that football, the energy is transferred from your feet to the ball. And when the ball moves, you may call that yang. And when it slows down, eventually comes to stop, you call it yin. So from within one object, you can transfer from yin to yang of two different states. And that is something we can see. Then there's also a lot of the phenomena that we see, we don't understand, but they also follow this way. For example, you see people die every year, but there's always newborns. You see disease and war, disasters come and go, but we always come back. That is a balance that life itself is trying to struggle back at all the environment's harsh takes on it. And you can actually use that. For example, if you want someone to fight back, you want to push him a little harder. And when he fights back, he would have much more energy than he originally has. So there's a lot of actual practices that we use this. For example, when you teach a kid, when you're teaching him and this kid is less motivated, sometimes we try to make something to his mind to make him motivated. And sometimes people would say harsh words like talking down to him, or you can't do too much. If you do it too much, you throw away the balance. But if you do it just enough, this kid is gonna be motivated to prove himself, and he's gonna fight back, and he's gonna do something that he originally wouldn't do. Another very good example is CPR. Okay, so when the person is losing consciousness and is on the branch of dying, CPR is gonna bring them back. When you breathe in the carbon dioxide to his mouth, you're not just breathing in the carbon dioxide, you are breathing in the life energy of yourself, and you're also stimulating his what's it called? His survival instincts, because the carbon dioxide kind of kind of stimulates his survival instincts. And the next thing is how we use the electricity to try to bring people back to life. That's the same thing. Those are all mutual generations. There are other things as well. For example, if you sleep at night, you get more energetic in the morning. Think about that, right? You, without sleep, without taking rests, why can't you do it? You're also intaking the food, you also have the energy, but you still need a rest. You always need that rest. There's very rare conditions where people who don't sleep and because you have some certain type of brain damage, but there's never ever an occasion where a person doesn't need a rest. Why is that? Because of the mutual generation. And then there's mutual transformation. The generation, the transformation, they are just terms. Yin and Yang, they are qualities and quantities of the natural world that we are trying to describe and define, but they exist on their own with or without our understandings. So the mutual transformation sometimes can be seen similar to the generation. We're just talking about one transforming to another generation. We're talking about one giving the energy to another. So maybe what I talked about on the last part was mostly transformation, very little about the generation. So maybe I'll give you another example of a generation, but it will be very difficult to understand. So for example, you have men and women. I know there's a lot of gender terms out there, but I'm talking about general men and women in a pre-political correctness world, and it's specific. So when men work alone, they have certain characteristics, they have certain qualifications, and if you put a woman in the men's group, if you have enough women working with men, you will see that men are getting more energy. They are more sometimes provocative, then sometimes they are more encouraged to express themselves to or if you maintain the balance, you actually do better. And this actually refers to the diversity. So in a lot of the time we're talking about diversity, diversify the groups, diversify the ethnicities. According to the Yin Yang concept, that should work. You have some diversity, even though you would think that like say for example, some people hates company having diversity hires because they think that diversity hire doesn't have what it takes. They don't have the quality to do the job. Maybe you don't. I mean, it's not necessarily true, but even if that person doesn't have that, because of the concepts of the yin and yang, that diversity is going to, I'm specific saying diversity hire, is going to bring something new to the company, and that is going to have this mutual generation effect on the entire company or on the group that she works in, and that is going to bring energy and extra little something. That, remember we talk about the yin and yang multiply. So they are going to multiply, create something new. Just because you have something different, you have someone different, even though you would think that different someone something is not qualified to do this thing. Having that there is valuable in most of the cases. Now let's talk about the next thing, which is mutual complementation. Mutual complementation is talking about they rely on each other. basically saying if you only have something of yin characteristic or only have something of yang characteristic, it's not going to be enough. So for example, if you nowadays we see a lot of say gay couples, homosexual couples, you can see within their relationship that they're going to diversify their characters or roles in the relationship. Not necessarily one person is going to play all the conventional male female character, but you can see that they will diversify. There will be something somewhat different. It's very rare to see a couple who are identical to each other in qualities, characteristics, and especially when people are very, very similar. You have to be somewhat similar, homogeneous to get together. But if they are equal, the same, like for example, like if they care about the same kind of concept and they have the exactly same idea, it's actually difficult for them to get together. They have to have some kind of difference. That is what mutual complementation is talking about. So if you have something that is strong, that is hard, that is powerful, that's usually young, you would have to have something soft, something something less powerful, gentle to compensate it. You have to. If you don't have it, the balance here is going to be overthrown and it's going to break. So, for example, if you are, let's say, if you are making a lot of money, you have to give that money back to the society. You have to find a way to do charity. You have to find a way to give what you earned back to the society. Otherwise, you are breaking the balance. And because you're breaking the balance, eventually this will come for you and you will see, you will notice. So either you're going to have uncontrollable, unforeseeable money losses, or more likely, you're going to have a health problem. You're going to have something that you think shouldn't happen happening to you because you are not following the balance of the world. Another thing is if you are always being aggressive, like for example, a person who's always aggressive, always being strong, debating, if you give him someone who's soft, who's shy, who is gentle, caring, and also takes in whatever, you can see that person, they will get together just fine. They will like each other. They will enjoy each other's company. Well, and I'm talking about functional, normal human being. I'm not talking about psychopaths because that is a whole different area. And then next thing is mutual restriction. So mutual restriction is talking about how having yin and yang of each other, they can prevent each other from exploding. And it's something I just talked about in the last part. So for example, if you have, let's say, let's make another example. Let's say if you have the sun, you have to have the night. So there are many planets in the solar system. And you can see from those solar systems where they have too much daylight or when they don't have clouds, you can see the temperature change. If it's too much daylight, it's going to be so hot that no life will survive on there. And if it's too much, if it's too much night, there's nothing to protect the heat. prevent the heat from releasing, it will be so cold. You have to have that balance, and that balance is very important for which we said the yin and yang multiplication. And yin and yang multiplication is very, very essential. So for another thing would be China and the United States, or it used to be Soviet Union and the United States. So you see, so United States is a very powerful country, and all the strategic concepts are to ensure United States global dominance, right? But you always see some rivals. Used to be Soviet Union, and then there was China, there was Afghanistan, there's some terrorist groups. Why is that? Because mutual restriction. It will naturally exist. And that mutual restriction actually helps United States. Because when you have your rivalries, and according to Chinese, this is according to Chinese philosophy, when you have your rivalries, when you have your adversaries, it actually helps you to do more good, helps you to reflect on yourself, and makes you a better person or a better entity. And now let's talk about how you can actually use yin and yang, because all of that what I talk about is just right, just concepts. How you can do it. So first thing is to follow the yin and yang of the word. Do not be the adversary to the word, because that would literally kill you. So for example, there's day and night. Follow the day and night cycle. When it is in the morning, get up, do some exercise. That benefits your health more than you can know, because you are following the yin and yang order. You are trying to follow the yang, the newly generated yang in the morning, and that's benefiting your health. So when it comes to night, when it's getting close to midnight, stop your exercise. Don't do exercise. Go to bed. Turn off the lights. That will benefit your health as well, because you are following that yin and yang order. The next thing is there are seasons, right? There's spring, there's summer, there's autumn, there's winter. Or in some areas you don't have that, but you have the general yin yang cycle of the seasons. Follow that season. And in addition to follow that season, you can have health treatments. For example, if you have a bad cold, like say if you have some kind of disease that you caught during the winter, you can try to treat that during the summer when it's hot, and vice versa. But that refers to an entire chapter of the Chinese medication, traditional medication, and that is too much for us to talk about today. Another thing is, when you're doing something, slow it down or change it up a little bit. I see a lot of exercise videos talk about this. So for example, you're doing some bench press. You might want to change the weight a little. You don't have to always bench press to your personal record. You can use, let's say you can use the heavy weight for 2 sets, and then use the medium to lower weight for the next 2 sets. And you will see it's going to improve your overall muscle. Another diversification is to change the angle of your movement. But when you do that, because you are engaging in different muscles, you want to be more careful and probably use much lower weights, because when you're getting used to heavier weights and change the angle, you may get injured. And also, you can put weightlifting trainings and cardio trainings together, combine them, diversify them, because that is using yin and yang. And also use training, rest, training, rest combinations. So, which is, for example, if you train really hard on Monday, don't do it too hard on Tuesday. Take it take it easy on Tuesday, and then do a little harder on Wednesday, and then take it easy on Thursday. By changing those and diversify those, you will see that there's going to be a little more than what you had before. Scientifically, there's no proofs of that, or I haven't seen any scientific proof of that, but that is according to the concept in Yin and Yang. You can use that. And I can say so much. That is all I have. Thank you, and I'm very sorry for the background noise. If you have any questions, please leave a comments below. If there's any other thing you want me to talk about, please leave a comment below. I have a lot to share in Chinese philosophy and Taoism and Buddhism, but I just need the questions to even give an answer. And thank you very much for listening. If you like it, please click the like button. Please subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye bye.